Welcome to the Becoming You show with me, your host, Leah Rowling. Do you believe you are capable of choosing your future? Sometimes it takes just one person to believe in you, or you to believe in yourself. If you find yourself continuing to say, someday I will take better care of myself, only to continue living the same day over and over and over again, then you, my friend, are in the right place. I am your biggest cheerleader, inspiring you to become you on purpose and with intention. Are you ready to create a life you love? I'm excited to share with you some big ideas that you can use today to inspire, impact, and influence your life and everyone in it. The Becoming You show starts now. Hello, how are you? How was your week? I want to thank you for being here with me. I want to thank you for the reviews and the comments and for connecting with me. I love it. I have heard that this Live Lighter topic has been impactful, which just warms my heart. And so I wanted to let you know that I'm working on creating a Live Lighter workbook that you will be able to download and work through in an attempt to find your life and create your life clutter-free. So more to come on that. But we are continuing our Living Lighter series today by talking about 2 additional types of clutter. So we talked about physical clutter. That is the clutter that our best life is found under, literally. We talked about virtual clutter and how it affects not only our energy, but our relationships. We talked about temporal clutter and how much of our life is wasted in distraction and delays and doubt. And today I'm going to introduce 2 other types of clutter that we might not think is clutter worthy, but I assure you that they are the biggest offenders. We're going to talk about our thoughts and our stories and our beliefs. Jim Wooden, one of the most revered coaches in American sports, once said, "Make each day your masterpiece." I think it's safe to say that everyone would love to live each day as if it were a masterpiece. It's often a question of putting mind over matter and saying, this is going to be a great day, and I'm going to make the best of it. And while this attitude is well within the reach of every single individual, sometimes our thoughts get the better of us. Regrettably, as human beings, we frequently let our minds take control over us when we should be doing the opposite, taking control of our minds. The mind is a powerful tool, but it cannot work to its full capacity if we let mental clutter thrive. My definition of mental clutter is any belief, attitude, story, or way of thinking that limits a person's ability to be, to do, or to have what he or she wants. So let me give you a few examples of mental clutter. Let's say you're an aspiring entrepreneur and you come across an article called How to Sell Yourself, but you believe that it would never work for you because you're not talented enough. Okay, this limits your ability to be who you've always wanted to be, since you are prematurely deciding ahead of time that you're not. Let's say for a long time, you've wanted to ask your spouse or your children for more help at home, but you think it'll be too much of a bother. That limits your ability to get the support that you need because you are projecting your assumptions, how you think others will react or feel about something. Let's say you've wanted to open up your own business for the past 5 years, but things are not quite perfect yet. That limits your ability to follow your dream because you've convinced yourself that there will be a perfect time and place to do so. You're working on building your confidence, but it never seems to show up when it matters. And so you don't put yourself out there in any uncomfortable, vulnerable way. And this, of course, limits your ability to live into the fullest potential because you're not willing to take the risk in uncertainty. I'm going to ask you a few questions. And if you're having trouble answering the questions or pinpointing your mental clutter, then I want you to have a brainstorming session about the things that you've wanted to be, to do, or to have in your life, which are still applicable to you, by the way, and why you haven't attained these things. Knowing what is missing from your life and why it's missing is the key to unpack the mental clutter, especially the why part of the equation. And journaling, as you hear me say almost every episode about these areas, will start to reveal and uncover the mental blocks and barriers that you have. So here's a few questions that, if you can, take a piece of paper out and a pencil if you're not driving and journal on these things. Don't miss that opportunity to invite your brain to speak directly into and onto paper. Okay, so number one, what are your long-term goals or desires that have not been realized? And then why do you believe progress toward your goals and desires has stalled? Okay, here's what I want you to consider. I think that there are 3 reasons that our long-term goals, or even short-term goals for that matter, have not been achieved. Number one, you told yourself a story that your goal was not achievable. Either you tried and you didn't succeed, or you just failed ahead of time by not trying at all. Number 2, you did not work on the character development to be that person that could do what was needed to achieve the goal. Either you stayed the same, thinking, feeling, and doing, and expecting a different result, or you operated from shame, I'm not good enough, or pride, I'm better than everyone else. Goals and desires are rarely accomplished operating from either. And the third reason is you did not cultivate the competencies necessary for the specific goal you had in mind. I love big goals, but sometimes we compare our beginning to other people's veteran status, thinking that we should be farther along, more deserving. And then we swirl in this, it's not fair mentality. How come I don't have what they have now? We get impatient. And so we either push too hard and burn out, or we don't push at all and we stall out. The middle is always the way. The second question I want you to think about is, do you typically think negatively or positively about your goals and desires? Do you feel that your attitude directly influences whether or not you achieve your goals and desire? Why or why not? This is what I know about neuroscience and goal psychology. The belief effect matters. If you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, you can't. Now, I know you've heard this before. And if you're like, Leah, yeah, I know this, I want you to consider that you might not know this. Most of us think we know this, but we don't know. You see, the reason this mantra off affirmation is more than just a clever, witty saying is because your brain wants to prove you right. It cares more about you being right than you accomplishing the goals that you set for yourself. So it will go to work on writing your can'tness. Okay. The third question I want you to think about: do you often decide what other people will say before they say it? Do you often decide the outcome of a situation before it actually happens? Do you feel that your thoughts have a direct influence on instances like these? Again, why or why not? Here's what I want to offer. Assumptions are a surefire way to disconnect us, sabotage progress, and lose integrity with ourselves and with others. When we assume that other people will be upset about what we have to say or we don't say, we lose integrity with ourselves as if they matter more than us. What would it look like if you just asked for what you wanted? You requested the support that you need, that you told the truth about how you're feeling, and then just let everyone else think and feel however it is that they want to. And I'm not suggesting being mean and passive aggressive. The whole truth is always the kindest thing. But so many times people are finding away their life to spare others theirs. The cost? No relationship with anyone, not the person you're pretending to be, not with yourself. Can you imagine what type of relationship you would have with a friend or a child if you told them that, you know what? Could you just pretend to just be someone else, anyone else, for the sake of the betterment of the world? That would be better. That is what we are saying to ourselves every single time we assume, we pretend, and fine away our matters, our thoughts, and our feelings. Are you a perfectionist? If so, do you feel your tendencies directly influence whether or not you make progress on your goals and desires? Again, why or why not? A lot of people think this perfectionistic mentality is a good thing, right? It's a good thing. But I want to offer you perfectionism as a state of being is toxic. It is a never-ending pull of war to an end that is unavailable, inaccessible. We think perfectionism is an inside trait, and it isn't. We are not being perfectionistic for ourselves. If we are honest with ourselves, we are being perfectionistic for others in hopes that they will validate, and then we will be enough. And we also lose sight of the word that is perfect. To perfect means that we kind of have to not be great at it. To perfect and then perfect. Tweak, perfect, tweak. Is there anything that we could truly say is perfect? Is perfectionism more than just an ideology? Lots of ongoing debate about it all together. Spiritually, behaviorally, scientifically, creatively. I'd love your take on it. Where I land today is that I believe that we are all perfectly imperfect on purpose. We are wired for growth and connection. And as humans, we do two things. We create and we evaluate. If we create and evaluate in this world, that with which we create requires opportunity for us to evolve in that creation, which would require an imperfect state. When we evaluate, compare, and judge, however we judge, positively or negatively, it is still a comparing to what standard? That of perfect, perhaps, but perhaps our set worth and greatness is more about the potential of our own experiences imperfectly. Another question. Do you tend to belittle your ability to succeed or your value as a person? If so, do you feel that that mindset has a limiting effect on your goals and desires? Why or why not? Similarly to the first one, the belief effect honors your perceived capabilities. Do you believe in your ability to succeed? Do you believe in your ability to figure things out? Or do you think that you are a person capable of achieving, at least not achieving things, that without the how? It's that piece of confidence that we think we need to have, but consider the only way that you would have complete and unwavering confidence is if you knew the outcome, right? But if you knew the outcome, confidence wouldn't necessarily be required. So what is, I believe, that's even more important than confidence is that we need to learn to master tolerating the unknown. And then the last question I want you to think about and reflect on is, generally speaking, would you say that you're a pessimist or an optimist? Why? Again, no judgment. Is it learned? That's another question in the psychology space. Consider we all come into the world without bias, without prejudice. Our beliefs then are inherited, recycled, borrowed. Where did you learn about either? Did you grow up in a family that saw the bad in everything, saw the worst in everyone? Or did you grow up in a family that made lemonade out of lemons, saw the best in everyone? I had a particularly unfair advantage in this because I was raised by what I'm just going to call a saint. Rarely did my mother complain about anything, and she had much to complain about. Rarely did she compare herself, her family, to the better fortune of others. Rarely did she comply with the negativity offered. Rather, she witnessed and spoke only if it bettered the silence. She didn't compare, complain, or comply. Rather, she loved. She is the best example I have as to someone who lived in the middle. How are you living? Do you find yourself complaining a lot about a lot? Do you find yourself comparing your life to others, thinking if only? Do you find yourself complying with what you assume or with what others assume? Guess what it would take for you to live fully lighter in the middle? Shedding your scarcity, shaming stories, bagging your borrowed limiting beliefs, and thinking about what you're thinking about, and realizing that these thoughts are not facts. They are optional. The life you want is waiting for you under the thoughts you don't. What you deserve is cluttered by the thoughts that are not serving you. Free yourself from them so that you can free yourself to live into the potential of what's possible. So many of our thoughts, 95% of them, are from our past. Friends, there are no possibilities in your past. You get to choose them for your future. I invite you to do that. Okay, so not only is mental clutter keeping you from taking action, but it is creating the next clutter that I'm going to share with you about today. Mental clutter creates emotional clutter. If you've been with me a while, you know that our thoughts create our feelings. You have a thought, and then a neurobiological hormonal chemical is released in the brain. And then your body, a vibration of sorts, okay? That is all an emotion is, okay? It's really important that you understand that you are not feeling anything because of anything outside of you. You are not mad because your husband didn't do what you asked him. You're not frustrated because your kid lied. You are not embarrassed because of what someone said about you. You are mad and frustrated and embarrassed because of the thoughts in your brain. So you can, about every emotion, okay, if you consider that the thoughts in your brain create mental clutter, this mental clutter then creates all sorts of emotional clutter. And once you know that, it changes everything. Because consider this, everything that we do or not do is to either feel a certain way or to not feel a certain way. Emotions drive every single thing we do. They are the fuel for our action. And when we fuel our actions with emotions like frustration and anger and overwhelm, we will most likely not be taking the best action. Vincent van Gogh said, emotions are the great captains of our lives, and we obey them without realizing it. We make every single decision based upon how we feel about someone or something. And with this in mind, emotional clutter can wreak havoc not only on the outcome of each and every single day of your life, but also every single week, month, and year. Emotional clutter is any individual, group, place, thing, idea, or commitment that brings negative energy into a person's life. The negative energy is created by what I am going to call a negative emotion. And I don't like to label emotions, but for purposes of this clutter conversation, I'm going to differentiate negative and positive emotions with something that I learned from Byron Katie. She talks about clean pain and dirty pain. Clean pain, I'm going to call positive emotion. It leaves you feeling better. It moves you through an experience. Dirty pain, negative emotion, leaves you feeling bitter. It keeps you in the pain. The best way to determine if it is clean or dirty, positive or negative, is by asking this one simple question. Does this emotion that I am feeling allow me to show up being who I want to be or not? That's the question. And if not, it's emotional clutter. We think negative pain is necessary. We think it's helpful. We think it's preventative, but it isn't. And in so many cases, we buffer, avoid, distract ourselves so we don't feel it. And this either causes the situation to get worse or it creates a new set of situations to feel bad about. Let me offer you some examples. You have a debt hanging over your head, and it makes you feel angry at yourself for getting into debt in the first place, and jealous of perhaps others who don't have to worry about money. And when you're angry, you either buffer, right? You consume with food, making the problem worse. You avoid and not look at your bank account, making it worse. You distract with social media and either swipe up to buy that next new thing in hopes that that will make you feel better, impacting the physical clutter that we talked about in the first series, right? Or you scroll down to compare and amplify the anger with a hefty dose of shame. Another example, there's a person in your life that seemingly always puts you down, and the very mention of his or her name makes you cringe, and you get uncomfortable around being with that person, and you become certain it is them you get triggered by and don't like. But what I find most often is that it is you that you don't like. You don't like how you're showing up around them. The question will always be, do I like how I'm showing up? And if we feel triggered and cringy, the way we will show up will look way different than if we are accepting and curious and compassionate. Let me give you just one more example. You made a promise to a cause that your heart just isn't into, and you regret that promise every time you note it on your calendar, think about it, or participate in it. We do this all the time. We make commitments out of obligation, out of people pleasing, out of pretending, and then we get resentful and regretful. And again, the way you know if the fuel is clean or dirty is how you show up. If you are doing it out of obligation, people pleasing, you will feel resentful and regretful. But if you're doing it from serving and a giving heart, you will feel at ease and accepting and allowing. And if you're still not sure if you struggle with emotional clutter, let me ask you just a few more questions to consider. Are there things, people in your life that pull at your heartstrings for all the wrong reasons? What have been the low points for you over the last month or so? When you can identify these, it's easier to understand how negative emotions clutter your ability to problem solve and choose your best life. Is there an individual or group in your life that brings you anxiety and tension and frustration? How does that make you feel? Is there a place in your life that you think about in scarcity, in lack? Maybe it's with regards to your health or your weight or your finances or your relationships. Are there things in your life that drive you crazy that you think should be better or different? And lastly, are there commitments and obligations that bring you negative emotion? All of these questions are really just to get us thinking about where we have clutter thoughts. Because where we have clutter thoughts, we will have clutter feelings. Any thoughts and feelings in scarcity, in lack, are clutter worthy. Awareness of these clutter thoughts and clutter feelings is the first step into shifting the story to a more courageous and honest and vulnerable one. Your best life depends on it. If you want to take what you are learning on this podcast to the next level, I invite you to check out our Becoming group online at www.leahrowling.com/becoming. It's an online coaching community where we break down big topics in personal development. We take what you're learning on this podcast and we 10x it to the next level. They are masterclasses and workshops, and I offer practical steps and for growth and transformation to give you insights and thoughts about areas of your life, hoping to open the door for you to inquire and to think about, to reflect on, to make a plan to improve. Have an amazing weekend, everybody. Live lighter, become unstoppable, and I will see you next Friday for the very last series in this Live Lighter series. Thanks for being with me today, you guys. Go live lighter and love in the middle. Mwah. See you soon.
You have been listening to the Becoming You show with me, your host, Leah Rowling, where I share big ideas to inspire, impact, and influence your life. Tune in every Friday at 11 Central on transformationtalkradio.com for your morning cup of coffee, the hug you never want to end, and that inspirational message that you felt was written just for you. Each show is inspiring you to become you with purpose and intention. For more information or to connect with me, visit www.leahrowling.com.